Good day, everyone. I'm Miss Vilma Padayaw, together with Mr. Edwinador Gonzaga Jr., and the topic that we are going to tackle is about child abuse. To start with, let us first know who are these children that can be considered or belong to child abuse. So let us define what is a child. So a child defined as a human being between the stages of birth and puberty, or between the developmental period of infancy and puberty. The legal definition of child generally refers to a minor, otherwise known as a person younger than the age of majority. Children generally have fewer rights and responsibilities than adults. So this is a child or children ages from 0 to 17 or less than 18 years old, because 18 years old is already considered as adult who knows already their rights and responsibilities. So what is abuse? Based from the dictionary, abuse defined as to use improperly or excessively, to hurt or injure by maltreatment, to force a sexual activity on, rape or molest, to assail with insulting or hurtful words, defined as revile and obsolete. So this is how they defined the word abuse. So what is abuse in psychology? So abuse is very offensive. This word is used for bad behavior or bad effects for a bad purpose. Treats with cruelty or violence, especially regularly or repeatedly. Abuse is the improper usage of treatment of a thing, often to unfairly or improperly gain benefit. Abuse can come in many forms, such as physical or verbal maltreatment, injury, assault, violation, rape, unjust practices, crimes, or other types of aggression. So we come now to the topic itself. What is child abuse? So child abuse is not just physical violence directed at a child. It is any form of maltreatment by an adult, which is violent or threatening for the child. This includes neglect. When child abuse occurs in the home, the abuser is, for example, the child's parents or caregiver. This is a form of domestic violence. Pero hindi nangangailangan na ang pagmamaltrato po ay maaring magmula o nagmumula lamang sa ating mga magulang, miyembro ng pamilya, tagapag-alaga. Pero ito ay pwede ding magmula mismo sa ating mga guro, kapatid, kalaro, at sa lahat ng mga taong nakapalibot sa kanya, whether it is physically, verbally, or emotionally, na pang-aabuso. So there are four general types of child abuse. The first one is physical abuse, pananakit sa katawan ng mga bata. So what is physical abuse? Physical abuse is the most visible form of abuse and may be defined as any act that results in a non-accidental trauma or physical injury. Mga pananakit na kung sa kanilang murang edad, mga ginagawa nilang mali na hindi pa masyadong naiintindihan na kung saan tayo matatanda ang dapat na mas nakakaintindi, bagkus tayo pa ang kalimitan o kadalasang nagpaparana sa kanila ng mga trauma at pananakit. So marami sa ating mga kaguruan, magulang, nang dahil sa iba pang concern sa pamilya at sa sarili, nakakalimutan natin na tayo ay mga magulang o kanilang guro, na kung saan ang ating responsibilidad ay bumuo at magpaunlad ng kabuuan ng kanilang pagkatao upang sila rin ay lumaking mabuti. Pero kadalasan, tayo pa ang pumipigil upang hindi nila makuha o makamtan ang mga aspektong ito, maliban sa kanilang pamilya at iba pang taong nakapaligid sa kanila, na kung saan nagiging dahilan ang mga bata upang sa hindi sinasadya dahil sa limitadong kaisipan o pag-iisip, nakakagawa sila ng mga mali o hindi kanais-nais sa atin. Kanais-nais sa atin. So the second is the emotional or psychological abuse. So what is emotional or psychological abuse? So emotional abuse, which is sometimes called psychological abuse. It is a pattern of behavior that damages a child's sense of self-worth and have negative impact on child's emotional development. So this is a form of pain that children usually, or we can say always, children experience from us. To his, her family members, the experience from friends, from his or her elders. Mga natatanggap nilang mga salitang hindi ka nais-nais, na mas nakakapabigat sa kanilang mga damdamin na kung saan paulit-ulit na kanilang narinig hanggang sa kanilang pagtulog. Sabi nga mas madaling makalimutan ang mga pasa sa katawan kaysa mga salitang hanggang kaluluwa na kung saan totoo din sa ating nakatatanda. In addition to withholding love and support, the person emotionally abusing the child also by reject, threaten, degrade, and criticize the child. They also may humiliate the child, engage in name-calling, and insult them. So the third one is emotional or psychological neglect. So this refers to a situation where a parent or caregiver does not provide the basic emotional care, attention, and affection that a child needs in order to develop proper emotional well-being. So mas madaling maintindihan. So madaling pagpapaintindi na kailangan lang nila ang sapat na pag-aalaga, atensyon, pagmamahal na dapat nararanasan sana ng mga bata mula sa atin. Ngunit ang kanilang tanong mula sa kanilang murang isip, nasaan po mga biktima, mga batang biktima ng panlalait, bulyaw, mga hindi magandang pananalita, mga pagwawalang bahala sa kanilang opinyon ng dahil sa sila ay bata pa. Wala pa sa sapat na kaisipan. Mga batang nagiging biktima ng mga matatanda na kung saan kadalasang gustong may mapasahan ng bigat ng ating mga problema na ating nararanasan. So ang tawag dyan ay shock absorber. Tagasalo ng ating mga bigat na nararamdaman. So there are signs of emotional or psychological neglect. The first one is emotional unavailability, which is a person is emotionally unstable When they distance themselves from all kinds of emotional connections, they either withdraw or make a big deal out of the situation when anyone tries to know them from up close. So mula sa atin, para sa mga bata, sinasabihan natin sila kadalasan, pabulyaw. Doon ka, wag ka dito, wala kang alam. Usapang pangmatanda lang ito. So traditionally noon, ganyan ang disiplinang pinapasunod sa atin ng ating mga nakatatanda, lalo na kay lolo at lola. Pero ngayon, baka isipin natin na mas kung minsan merong sense ang kanilang sinasabi kaysa sa atin. Minsan tayo pa ang nagtatanong sa ating sarili, saan niya alam yon? Saan niya nalaman? O natutuhan ang mga yon? Kaya minsan kailangan din nating buksan o bigyan lugar ang ideya at opinyon nila. Dahil minsan mas may halaga pa kung anong ideya meron sila. So the next one is numbness, pagiging manhid, known as affective blunting. Means that a person is unable to experience emotions. Alternatively, they may feel as though they are cut off from their own emotions. Some signs and symptoms that may be associated with emotional numbness include feeling disconnected from one's body or thoughts. So ito na po yung sitwasyon or kondisyon na kung saan dahil sa mga sakit sa damdaming nararanasan ng mga bata mula sa mga pagmumura, pagmamaliit, pagbubulyaw na halos kanilang nararanasan, wala na silang nagawang tama, sila ay nagiginang manhid na kahit pagsabihan mo pa sila ng paulit-ulit, wala na silang naririnig. Hindi na sila sumusunod at ito ay nakakaalarma dahil kung anumang kinikimkim nilang galit o nararamdaman ay maaari makapinsala sa iba pang mga bata na kung saan yung kayang-kaya lang nilang gawa ng masama dahil yun din ang kanilang naranasan. So the third sign is lack of compassion to themselves. This is low self-compassion that can also lead to perfectionism. People who feel they must be perfect all the time tend not to be forgiving of their own failures and may only feel worthy of love, acceptance, and respect when they achieve success. So para sa ating mga magulang, bakit kailangan maging perfect ang ating mga anak sa lahat ng bagay? So bakit dapat sila ay maging ayon sa gusto nilang o ayon sa gusto nating maging kung ano sila? Hindi kaya dahil nakakahiya sa mga taong kakilala natin na ang kakayahan nila ay hanggang dito lang. So minsan nakalimutan nating mga magulang na ang bawat bata ay may sariling kakayahan na kung saan din doon sila uunlad base sa kung ano ang gusto nila, sa kung ano ang makakaya nila, na kung saan sila magiging masaya. So sana hindi tayo mga magulang, mga guro, ang maging hadlang sa pangarap na kung saan sila uunlad at magiging masaya. So the fourth is blaming themselves for everything. So this is synonym for self-reproach, self-blame. It is a common reaction to stressful events and has certain effects on how individuals adapt. Types of self-blame are hypothesized to contribute to depression, and self-blame is a component of self-directed emotions like guilt and disgust. So ang bata ay nagkakaroon ng ugaling sinisisi ang sarili dahil pinagmumukha sa kanila ang kawalang halaga nila sa mundo na kanilang kinabibilang. At ito ay nagde-develop sa kanila ng pagiging worthless. Na bakit kasi ganito lang ako, ang hina-hina ko, and this will lead to self-hate. So the fifth is need to be independent. It gives a child a sense of importance and belonging, which is essential for building social relationships and for contributing to the world. So dito natututo ang mga batang maging responsable, matutong makipagkapwa-tao kung saan sila ay maging isang leader ng bansa ayon sa kanilang abilidad at kakayahan. So how to overcome the feeling of emotional neglect? So the first is be aware of the child's emotions. So there are different kinds of emotions. We have admiration, adoration, appreciation of beauty, amusement, anger, anxiety, awe, awkwardness, boredom, calmness, confusion, craving, disgust, empathic pain, entrancement, excitement, fear, horror, interest, joy, nostalgia, relief, and many more. So bilang guro at magulang, the first thing na ginagawa natin ay ang pagkilala sa attitude or character ng bata sa pamamagitan ng pag-oobserba sa kanilang mga reaksyon sa mga bagay-bagay na kanilang nararanasan. So bilang kanilang mga nakatatanda, alam natin kung ano ang nakapagpapasa sa kanila, anong mga bagay na kanilang ikinagagalit at iba pa. So marapat lamang na sana sa panahon o oras na hindi sila nagpapakita ng kagandahang emosyon, doon natin sila dapat na maintindihan. Sabi nga sa popular na kasabihan, kung ano ang ginagawa ng bata o ginagawa ng matatanda sa paningin ng bata, yan ay tama. So the second, how to overcome the feeling of emotional neglect is self-love for children. This is a state of appreciation for the children that grows from actions that support our physical, psychological, and spiritual growth. Self-love means having a high regard for their own well-being and happiness. Self-love means taking care of their needs and not sacrificing your well-being to please others. At itong self-love ang magsasalba, lalayo sa pag-aabuso sa kanila. Pagmamahal. So, pampering the child. So the fact is, our children are born with an innate desire to do things for themselves and begin to express that desire around the age of 2. Pampering is doing things for our children that they are perfectly capable of doing for themselves. Pero kinakailangan din ay dapat sapat lang. At kung ano lang ang dapat. Kasi lahat ng sobra ay mali at kung kulang naman ay dapat ibigay kung ano lang ang nararapat. Hindi pwedeng abusuhin ang pagbibigay atensyon, pagbibigay ng pagmamahal, na kung saan pwedeng magresulta din sa hindi maganda. So the 4 types of child abuse is the sexual abuse. So what is sexual abuse? It is unwanted sexual activity where perpetrators using force, making threats, or taking advantage of victims not able to give consent. Most victims and perpetrators know each other. So know each other. So maaaring ito, mga perpetrators na ito, ay mismong miyembro ng pamilya. Kalapit na kamag-anak, kaibigan ng magulang, kaibigan mismo ng bata, kapitbahay, at sino pang taong walang may matinong kaisipan na pwedeng umabuso sa kanila sexually. So dapat hindi naaalis ang mga mata natin sa kanila, lalo pa sila ay bata. Sumasami kahit kanino, bigyan lang ng pagkain, candy, sasama na. So what is child abuse? Based from the definition, child sexual abuse is a significant public health problem and an adverse childhood experience, or ACE. So child sexual abuse refers to the involvement of a child, those person less than 18 years old, in sexual activity that violates the laws or social taboos of society, and that he or she does not fully comprehend, does not consent to, or unable to give informed consent to, or is not developmentally prepared for and cannot give consent to. Experiencing child sexual abuse can affect how a person thinks, acts, and feels over a lifetime. So this can result in short and long-term physical, mental, and behavioral health consequences. So children's, we can say, are so delicate. So they are brittle, sensitive, so innocent, full of love and gratitude. Always bring smiles in times of our sadness, brighten our days when we are tired for all worries. According to Herbert Hoover, children are our most valuable resource. According to John F. Kennedy, children are living messages we send to a time we will not see. However, if only abused children can ask questions from us, are we really your hope? Are we really the future? But then, do we deserve to be abused? So this ends my discussion, and Mr. Gonzaga will further explain and give more examples on the types of child abuse. So this is Mrs. Vilma B. Padayaw, the discussant for the first part of our topic. Thank you very much. Sir, Madjana!
Good afternoon, everyone. Lalong-lalo po sa ating maganda at mabait na guro, Ma'am Nerissa Malco Beatriz. And sa akin naman pong naggagapuhan at naggagandahang mga classmates. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Para po ipagpatuloy ang aming report about child abuse, let me proceed. What is example of psychological abuse? Psychological abuse can include someone regularly embarrassing you in public or in front of family, friends, support workers, or people you work with, threatening to harm you, your pets, children, or other people who are important to you. Ayan, yung pong example ng psychological abuse. Pwede raw po pala sa harap ng ating kaibigan, family, pagkapag hinihiya na po tayo, ay talaga pong consider na po siya bilang psychological abuse. Next, what are the signs and symptoms of abuse or neglect? Infants, excessive crying or developmental delay. Ayun. Ano po? Fear, anxiety, clenching and phobias, nightmares, sleeping problems, bedwetting, social withdrawal, ano po, yung parang ayaw makipag-socialize, and hyperactivity. Ayan, hyperactivity pala, isa pa rin po yun, ano. And poor concentration or distractibility naman. Next is signs and symptoms of abuse or neglect behavioral clues. Infants' excessive crying or developmental delay, fear, anxiety, or, sorry, signs and symptoms of abuse or neglect behavioral clues. Next is social withdrawal, no? And poor concentration or distractibility, decreased school performance or yung humihina sa performance sa klase, no? Isa po yun sa palatandaan. Next is chronic school absenteeism. Yung parang mahilig siyang mag-absent, parang wala namang dahilan, no? And speech disorders. Ayun, pagsasalita rin pala. Disorders dyan. Pagsasalita or regressive behavior or age, seems afraid of parent eating issues, depression, ayun, positivity, increased verbal abuse or physical aggressive behavior with others, destroys or injures objects or pets, avoidance of undressing, withdrawal to touch, afraid of exam, overly compliant, especially with difficult or painful parts of the exam. Now, what are the symptom clues? Headaches, yan. Abdominal pain, chronic abdominal pain, acute blunt trauma may not show external marks. Look for distension, tenderness, absent bowel sounds. Vague, somatic complaints, often chronic. Worsening medical problems such as asthma, frequent unexplained sore throat. Ayan yung mga sore throat, no? Hindi lang pala sa COVID ito. Sorry, joke lang. And abnormal weight gain or loss. Reluctance to use an extremity, difficulty walking or sitting. Genital discomfort for painful urination or defecation. Unexplained symptoms. Look for poisoning, forced ingestion of water, salt, vomiting, irritability, or abnormal respiration may represent head trauma. Physical clues. Most common manifestations of abuse are found from skin. Ayun. Sa balat po pala talaga, no, makikita. Most common manifestation sa skin ng tao. No? Or bone. Poor hygiene. No? Nakaayaw na maglinis ng kanyang katawan. Dress inappropriately for weather. Failure to thrive. Poor weight gain. Baka namamayat na siyang maigi. Malnutrition. lack of care of medical needs, wound care, medication, C. Fractures, dislocations. C. Bruising. Defensive injuries on forearms. Bites. Yan, baka may mga kinagatan na dyan. Human bites are more superficial than animals and show up better 2 to 3 days later burns. In 6 to 20% of abused children, cigarette rope, immersion or shape of hot object. Is the severity of the burn consistent with length of contact by history? Cigarette burns, circular 8 to 10 millimeter deep hip margin may be confused with impetigo or moxibustion. Stun gun burns occur in pairs, 0.5 centimeter diameter and 5 cm apart. Immersion burns have sharp line of demarcation without rip or splash marks. Now, there are signs of restraints on axilla or extremities, trauma to ear, lacerations, traumatic hair loss, facial injuries without good explanation, oral or dental injuries such as torn or bruised frenulum, lips, teeth, palate, tongue, or oral mucosa. Injuries from non-ambulatory child may be bottle jamming, lacerations or tissue damage to oral structures may come from eating utensils, scalding or caustic liquids, scarring or bruising at corners of mouth from being cut, oral injuries or STDs from horse oral sex. Another is head injury, mental status change, retinal hemorrhage, subdural hematoma, intra-abdominal trauma, usually to multiple organs, bruising, tearing, bleeding, discharge from genital or rectal area, diagnose STD or pregnancy. Okay. So, yan po lahat yung uh, tungkol or all about the child abuse. So, once again, thank you very much and God bless po sa ating lahat.